Shalom once again, Yashala. This is Chaarawtazaahla. And as we're coming closer to our New Year and our Passover, I know there's a lot of questions out there with brothers and sisters. Some of y'all new, some of y'all old, trying to understand why some brothers having Passover and their New Year in April, and why some of them already had theirs already in March. So I'm going to try and give you a brief explanation as to why this is happening here in Israel. It all has to do with what Esau calls a leap year. Some of us read the book of Enoch, but without understanding, do not understand how Enoch comes about with the intercalary months and intercalary years. Those are the 3, 5, and the 8. When those years come, and what are you supposed to do to adjust the lunar years or the lunar months so that your feast days don't fall back into the winter. So I'm going to give you a brief explanation, and then I'm going to show you the calculations I did for the next 15 years. So that way your feast days will fall in the right season at the right time. Some brothers use an egg or a broom and try to balance it, because this is all about the equinox. Your year, your seasons begin with the equinox. The main one we're going to deal with today is the spring equinox, because the spring equinox is what brings in our new year. Our new year starts in the month of Abib. Abib has to fall in the springtime, right? So you cannot have Abib falling before the equinox, because the equinox brings in the springtime. Now, some brothers' calculation for the equinox is different. Other brothers use different methods. But the method that I'm going to show you is the one that Enoch explained to us in his book, in the book of Enoch, right? Some brothers take an egg and try to balance it and say, okay, yeah, this is the equinox. But guess what? You've been balancing that egg for 2-3 weeks now. And even after that, you can still balance it, because the sun is slowly approaching the 4th gate, or what Esau calls Aries. Aries by itself runs from March the 20th to April 19th. That is the 4th gate. So when the sun rises in Aries or in the 4th gate, that is when springtime begins. Not before, not after. It has to be within. Abib has to fall in between those days, March 20th to April the 19th. That's the 4th gate, called Aries, But I'm not going to get too much long into this. I'm going to go to the scripture and I'm going to read it for you. I'm going to read it in Enoch, and I'm going to read one scripture in the Bible, right? So this I'm going to read in the book of Enoch, chapter 74, right, to explain that. Right, this is Enoch 74, and we're going to read verse 12, right? It says, 12 gates I beheld in heaven, at the extremities of the earth, through which the sun, moon, and the stars, and all the works of heaven proceed at their rising and setting. So these 12 gates are represented by the 12 zodiac signs as we know them today. Scorpio, Libra, Aries, Pisces, Sagittarius. All these gates that Enoch talks about is what the Bible calls the tree of life. Because what they do, they bring forth healing for the nations. How do you know that? Let's read the same thing in the scriptures. So we're going to go to the book of Revelations, chapter 22. And we're going to start at verse 1. And you're going to see, I'm going to read it here in the Bible. And then I'm going to read what Enoch says of the same thing. For a lot of brothers, they don't follow Enoch because they think, oh, the book of Enoch is off, it's not scripture. But guess what? Ezra wrote 204 books. Esau only gave you 66. So where are the rest of the books? They're not valid? They're there. We just haven't gotten to them. They got them all locked up in the Vatican. But let's get to the scripture here. Revelations chapter 22 and verse 1. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of the Most High and of the Lamb. So where was John seeing this? He was looking up into heavens. He was looking because this river is in what we call the ozone layer, or the firmament that the Bible speaks of in Genesis, right? In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yield her fruits every month. That's a zodiac. That's what they call the zodiac. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. So in other words, the zodiac is used for the healing of the nations, right? So let's see what Enoch has to say concerning that. So we're going to go to Enoch chapter 75. And we're going to start at verse 12 also. So this is Enoch chapter 75 and verse 12. It says, the account of the 12 gates of the 4 quarters of heaven is ended. All their laws, all their infliction of punishment, and the health produced by them, have I explained to thee, my son, Methuselah. So in other words, the zodiac doesn't only bring forth healing and good health, but it can also bring forth infliction upon the nations, right? So we're going to continue on, because we're going to get into why we have what we call an intercalary month or intercalary year. Esau calls it the leap year, right? So we're going to read about this here in the book of Enoch also, right? So this is Enoch chapter 73 and verse 12 once again, right? So it says, so that the moon has 30 days less than the sun and stars. We as Israelites know that our feast days go after what? The lunar calendar, the moon, right? The moon has 354 days in a year. The sun, the solar calendar, has 364. So every year, the moon falls behind 10 days. So that in 3 years, the moon falls behind 30 days. So if you don't do an adjustment, like we're going to read here, if you don't do that adjustment in your calendar, your feast days is going to be off. It's going to end up back in winter time. A lot of brothers that came from One West know that we never went by Enoch. Matter of fact, we never went by anything. We followed Esau's calendar. And our feast days, we used to have Passover in February, in the midst of winter, you know. But that's a different story. So I'm going to finish reading Enoch for you. Verse 13. The moon brings on all the years exactly, that their stations may come neither too forward nor too backward a single day. So the moon, the sun, the stars, they're perfect. You know, their cycle is going to run perfect. You know, balancing an egg is not perfect. Looking for barley is not perfect, because sometimes barley can come late. Sometimes barley can come early. Sometimes the barley won't come at all. You know, the Most High might curse Israel and you won't have any barley to look for. So how are you going to calculate your years? Is that what Enoch did? Did Enoch balance an egg? Did Moses balance an egg on the altar? Did he stand a broom up? Did David do that? None of our prophets did that. Here's the guideline right here, right? So it says, the moon brings in all of her years exactly, that their stations may come neither too forward nor too backward a single day, but that the years may be changed. Here's the key word. But that the years may be changed with correct precision in 364 days. So what is that saying there? So what part of the year has to be changed? We know that a year has 12 months, 354 days or 364 days. So what has to be changed in that year? The thing that has to be changed that Enoch is talking about with precision is that on these specific years, in the 3rd year, the 5th year, and the 8th year, the year has to, instead of having 12 months, you will have to add an intercalary month, a 13th month. Whether you call it a leap year or whatever you want to call it, it has to be added, right? Let me read on. In 3 years, in the in the days are 1,092. In 5 years, they are 1,820. And in 8 years, 2,912 days. So in other words, every year, the moon, the lunar calendar falls back 10 days. 2 years, 20 days. 3 years, 30 days. Some brothers, according to their calculations, the way they configure their days and their years, they cannot get a 358 with the system that they're using. Why? Because it's off, you know. But I'm going to show you the system that Enoch showed us, and that is to go according to the equinox. And the equinox is not when you balance in an egg or a broom. The equinox is when the sun rises in Aries, and Aries falls during March 20th to April 19th. That's when Aries comes in. So if your new moon, here's a calculation, if your new moon falls on or before the equinox, guess what? You're in winter. So that means whenever you see your new moon fall before the equinox, March 20th, that would be a 13th month. And I'm going to show you that right now. And it's going to be right on time. If your new moon falls on the equinox or after the equinox, then that would be counted as a first month or a new year, right? So without further ado, I'm going to bring you the calculations that I've done for 2021 all the way to maybe 2038, so on. And I'm going to show you that every 3, every 5, and every 8 years, the new moon falls before the spring equinox. The moon, whenever the moon falls before the equinox or before the sun rises in the 4th gate or in Aries, you will have, or you must have, an intercalary month or intercalary year. If you don't do that, I'm going to read this book here in Jubilee. It's going to be brief. Well, try to make it brief. This is the book of Jubilee, chapter 6 and verse 32. It says, "And command thou the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and will constitute a complete year." This is a solar year. "And they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out of them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. But if thou do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment," which commandment? The commandment that the angel Uriel gave to Enoch. So if you don't follow this commandment or this cycle that's written here in Enoch, because you're not going to find this in the Bible. You're not going to find this in the 66 books, right? He said, if you don't do this, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order. And they will disturb all the seasons and the years, and they will neglect their ordinances. And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years. So that's what's happening to this year. Brothers didn't follow this. So now they have their Passover in March. But the real New Year is coming up on April the 13th. That's the real New Year. Right? So let me read down a little bit. For this reason I command, this is verse 38. For this reason I command and testify to thee, that thou mayest testify to them. For after thy death thy children will disturb, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons, the seasons, Sabbaths, and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. Right? So basically what is happening is brothers are keeping an abominable day according to the book. You continue reading in the book of Jubilee. You know why? Because they're following the nations. The balancing of an egg, that was never a tradition of Israel. That came from the Chinese. However they came up with that, somebody probably slipped upon it and they did that, you know. But that's not a tradition of Israel, balancing an egg or balancing a broom. That caught on to Americans years later after the Chinese did it, you know. But brothers would rather follow the Chinese tradition rather than to follow what the Most High gave us, right? So let's get into the new years, the years that the Most High gave us. I'm going to show you from 2021 all the way to 2038. And you can continue on if you want. Check your lunar calendar. This can work for either those that follow the dark moon or the first light. I follow the first light because that we are the turn of the light, and that is what the scripture and the book of Enoch says a new year begins, or a new month begins. It begins with the first light, right? I did a class previously on that, right? So here is the predictions for the next 18 years or 17. Okay, so here we have it. Here's the calculations that I put together for the new moons for the next, so till 2038, 18 years. Between those 18 years, you'll have 3, 5, and 8. And like I said earlier, if your 13th month or your first month falls before the equinox, on or before the equinox, then that year is a regular year. But if your if your first month falls before the equinox, you'll have to make that an intercalary month. Right, so we're going to do the counting, and I'm going to show you exactly. So right here we're in March 14th. That was a new moon last month, right? So I have that as an intercalary month, and we name that the 5th in the count, right? So the new year, which is going to be actually April 13th, that's going to be the new year. The new year wasn't March 14th. It's going to be April 13th. Why? Because this is an intercalary month, right? So this is going to be the first month. So we're going to show you the 3, 5, 8 right now. So right here you have 5. So we're going to continue to count the months for each year, right? So this is the first month, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And here's the first month for 2022, April 2nd, which is clearly after March the 20th. So this would not be counted as a intercalary month. So you're going to continue on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. First month is March 22nd, after the equinox again. So this would be your new year, the first month. Right, so we're going to go on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And your first month, as you see here, is March 11th, which is before the equinox. So this will be an intercalary month or a leap year. So let's see if you have 5 and 8. So we started off at 5 here. This one would be 6. This would be 7. And this one is 8, just like Enoch says. Right, so let's go on. So we have 2024, March 2024 would be a 13th month. It won't be, March 11th will not be your new year. So we have 8 here, right? So after 8, we're going to start all over again with the 3. So let's see if we have 3. So you have 1 here, 2, and 3. So this here would be the first month. This would be the 13th month. So because March 9th is definitely before the equinox. So your new year in 2027 would be April 8th, right? So this would be 3. So the next one would be 5, right? So March 9th, we're going to count and see, because this is where brothers get caught up. They can get the 3, but they can't get the 5. So let's see if you can get the 5 using the method that Enoch gave us. All right, so this will be the first month here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. March 27th, this is 6. All right, so March 27th is clearly after the equinox. So we're going to continue on. This will be the first, second, third, fourth, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Notice the 5, March 16th, clearly before March 20th equinox, right? So now you have the 3, 4, 5. So now you have the 3, 5. Let's see if we'll have the 8 also, right? I'm not going to go through every month. I'm going to just briefly show you. So March 16th, clearly before the equinox. Next one, April 4th, after the equinox. March 24th, after the equinox. March 12th, before the equinox, right? So here you have it. This is 5. This is 6. This is 7. And this is the 8th year right here. So this would be leap year 8, right? So we're going to go on, because March 12th before the equinox. So we're going to start the cycle once again. So the next one would be 3, right? So you're going to start with 1, 2. Let me back up a little bit to show you. March 31st before the equinox. After the equinox. March 21st after the equinox. March 11th before the equinox. So this is 3. 3 years later. Now we're going to go 4, March 29th, and 5. Notice how you get the 3, the 5, and the 8. March 18th before the equinox, right? So I didn't do all the rest of them, but you can do that on your own. Yeah, I did a couple more. Let me see. So this is 5. So let's see if you get the 8. No, this is 6. Okay, I didn't do any more after that. So as you can clearly see, by using what Enoch gave us, you can clearly get the 3, 5, 8 using the correct calculation of the equinox. Not using no egg, but using what the Most High gave us. When the sun rises in the 4th gate in Aries, March 20th is your starting point. So with that, I hope you got some understanding. Hope the Most High open up His understanding for you, so the next few years you won't be having your feast days out of season, and you would know how to adjust your lunar months according to the 3, 5, 8. Shalom.